The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Hello, everybody. We're back after an hour and 45 minutes thinking about the glamour of misidentification. You know, that that particular glamour is also an illusion for the more mental types. Maybe they're even more prone to it. It's such a problem, and that's why Ramana Maharshi, who Carl Jung, the great psychologist, he called him the whitest spot on a white surface. He had this method of getting to the bottom of things, the really important things. And that method was called the Vicharya. And it was very simple. So utterly simple that, you know, people might wonder, what can I get out of this? But it was to persistently, and I mean persistently, whenever you undertook the exercise, to ask yourself the question, who am I? Who am I? You know, and then of course it's a meditation. And we can penetrate through the misidentifications, and we can find something closer to the meaning of the boundless, immutable principle. We can also find what we've been working on, that all souls are identical with the oversoul. Now think about that for a minute. All, you know, there's no such thing. We no longer use the thought, my soul and thy soul. All souls are identical with the oversoul. Think about that. Identical. That means if you think you have a soul with a certain type of consciousness, that consciousness is just part of one consciousness. It's like the mythological creature Argus, who had 10,000 eyes, something like that. And of course, and it takes us right to the German, I think he's German, a little something else in there, but Leibniz, Gottfried von Leibniz, or Leibniz, Blavatsky points out, not Nitz, but Niz, indicating his other origin, who says a monad is a point of view. It's like the eyes of Argus. As many human monads as there are that many points of view, and they're not separate. Everybody else's point of view will be discovered to be your point of view, whether low or high. There will be a blending. When the sphere is ready, into the other spheres. when there is not readiness, that particular apparently isolated soul stays where it is until it works out the broader perspective that can allow it to unite consciously with other spheres of consciousness. Maybe the, let's see, maybe the best way, I think I've shown it before, but you know, there's this thing called, let's see, File Explorer, and hopefully, point of view, coming. And I love that Parabrahm. Yeah, here it is. See, here's what happens. It's hard to describe it, but to see those 7 separated spheres on every level, well, really, they are not 7 separated spheres. Not at a higher level of reality. They are that one which has sent them forth. That's what they are. And these 7, you can't really draw it because there's not enough room, but these 7 are not 7, but they are one. And the one joins the other 6 and proves to be one. And on it goes. So we're going to discover along the way, good or bad, that we are all parts of each other. Now, you know, people say, oh, I'm having a bad day. I'm having a bad hair day. And maybe there are certain times in the progress of an emanation when it might say, I'm joking, of course, I'm having a bad universe this time around. Really, things aren't going right. But eventually it all straightens out. And the one identity emerges and becomes a real fact of reality. So that kind of correlates with the first fundamental of the secret doctrine, that there is a boundless immutable principle, but the reflection of that is a little more practical. Third fundamental, all souls are identical with the over soul. What is the over soul? Well, from one practical perspective, it is the soul of the universe. What does that mean? It's the consciousness of the one being who rules any universe. It's called the consciousness of the universal logos. But consciousness does not stop there. That's just a tiniest fragment of what it's possible to be aware of. And the fathomless mysteries of absolute infinity wait to be understood. And there's a transcendent deity, absolute deity, that is aware of all of those possibilities that are somehow in that hyperspace realm above and beyond the universe. They are somehow simultaneously actualized. So, you know, look, if Galileo, that great intellect, looked at a simple drawing about concentric circles and basically said, God cannot be understood. You know, and we human beings with our feeble intellect, we think, okay, I understand God and the theologian proudly presents his or her conclusions, we're nowhere near understanding, and one day we will be closer, at least for universal understanding, until the universal logos decides or realizes that it cannot, in the same way, understand absolute infinity. There's only one being that can understand that, and that is the absolute deity who emerged from absoluteness. But that's my theme, and basically we all know so little, shockingly little this time around. If you really think, the forever circuit is beyond any normal range of thought. When you start thinking of your consciousness and your being in terms of foreverness, something might happen to your mind. Generally, it would be good. Some of my friends have joked, well, you'll certainly lose your mind. Well, you'll lose the way it has been applied. But the key is to get our everyday reality together with the foreverness circuit and with the great breath and with identifying as the oversoul. Remember, we just had a webinar where misidentification was the problem. Well, what if we actually got it that we were identical with the oversoul? And I think Emerson also has a essay on that, and his essay on karma. I think he calls it compensation. You can tell his line of incarnations. He may have been a clergyman in the cities of the East Coast in America in the middle of the 19th century, but he had really some kind of Brahmanic past, and they called him the Boston Brahmin because he could bring all these things to bear. Just want to welcome you here, Alexander, Andrea, Anne, double duty, Anne, you're really putting in the time. Antonella and Antoinette and Asha and Brennan and Catherine, Deborah, Eric, George, Heike, also for you, double duty. A number of people here are Ishtar and Judy, and Joan and Karen, again, another one, Mariana and Marina, hi, and Martha Gallahue, joining Martha Mickelson, who is a glutton for punishment here, Mary Bell Knudsen and Natney, and Nicole, Risto, hi, and Rose, hi, Sarah, Stefan, or Stephen, Stefan, we'll see, Susanna, Vera, there you go, again, Zenaidi, yes, and Veronica. So some of you are up for double punishment this fine evening, or whatever time it is for you. Just a sip of something here. So now we had reached some, we haven't done so many of these, we're basically, what we're in is the written commentaries that I made, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, word for word in Cosmic Fire until the very end when I said, oh, we got to do this on the video, not because the page looks so beautiful, but just because time was running out. So this is the beginning of our 15th webinar. I did 4 of them on my own, and the group webinar of group webinars is number 11. Okay, so let's take a look. We had like a little segue here. The relationship between all souls and the oversoul constitutes the basis for the scientific belief in brotherhood. And brotherhood is a fact in nature and not an ideal. And basically, he's talking about monads, actually, because it's on the monadic level somehow under Jupiter that we're realizing, finally realizing, the identity of all souls with the oversoul. So the word soul is interesting. It has many expansions. It doesn't just mean that it is the kind of consciousness you find in the causal body. It's much more than that. The monad has soul, the solar logos has soul, the galaxy has soul, the universe has soul. I mean, soul is consciousness, okay? So it's just a question of how confined or cramped that soul is, you know? You can sometimes watch a little bug crawl around, and it's obvious from the reactions that eventuate through touching, because touching and soul go together, that that tiny little creature has soul as well, is soul, is being, just the way we are. It's a big unity, and beyond the unity, it's a big oneness. Hopefully it dawns on us. And beyond oneness, it's zero-ness of a kind. At least in absoluteness, there is no form. And it's hard to have a one, you know, if you don't have anything following that one, working out the zero-ness of absolute reality. That's a really important thing. Is it a one? Is it a zero? Is it both? Now, these are abstract considerations, but they probably enrich life. I was just, I noticed again, I had said that we live in a pyramidal universe. It's a good way of thinking about it somehow. Pyramidal, if that's the way you pronounce it. And at the very capstone of the pyramid is the great universal logos, definitely the one in universal terms. Now, the adventures in our universe, once we get beyond being really badly misidentified, you know, once we really figure out who we are, the adventures are amazing and unique, and there's enough variety in absolute infinity to go on forever, and it already has forever, forever. As I've said before, you can go back to quadrillion universes on the line of the Great Breath, and in a way, it's all unique. The algorithm, the archetype that has to be worked out in that universe is unique to itself. It's not just endless repetition. I think, the story is that Nietzsche, German philosopher, was in despair over the ever recurrence of things. But I think, he needed a little bit of a conversation on what that might have meant, not identicality of occurrence and sheer repetition, but the idea that universes recur in uniqueness according to what Moria emphasizes quite a bit, the principle of unrepeatability. So same and yet not same, and we're way down here at the bottom of the pyramid right now in terms of our spiritual extension, our divine extension, but we will rise again along the line of the descending monad, and that's a real resurrection, if I can say. That word resurrection is used in so many ways. Resurrection of the body, principally, that's how we know it. But the resurrection of consciousness and the continual ascension along the line which sent us forth. And all of this, well, these are, metaphysical thoughts, but we can't say, well, that's so we can get better and better. No universe is better than the next. And as I've often said, if you imagine that every universe becomes successively even a little bit better, whatever better means, then that means that every universe is infinitely developed, whatever that means, because every universe has been preceded by a succession of beginningless series, infinite beginningless series. So you would have infinity everywhere, and maybe you can justify that, but when you look around, the universe looks like a pretty finite thing. Coming back to Earth here for just a moment, so we are the oversoul. We seem to be the encapsulated consciousness, but in fact, we are the oversoul. You can use the word soul in so many different ways. One way to use that term, it's funny, when I was a kid, I was always interested in the word soul, but I always got confused. Are we talking about the soles on our shoes? Are we talking about the sun as well? Are we talking about something else? It always seemed enigmatical to me, but I was attracted by the word. And of course, it means the one alone, doesn't it? And very interesting, if you take your musical, your pitch pipe or your piano or whatever instrument, and you go, ya-da-da-da-dum, you wind up on a note, and that wasn't it. That is a G, and it's a blue bell sounding note, which has to do with the principle of soul. I guess there's a certain isolation that we experience when in full soul consciousness, and I think it only gets stronger and stronger. If you're a fifth degree initiate, you experience isolated unity. That's what we have to do, even though DK doesn't quite like the term and says it could be a better term. He uses it, and at the third degree, you begin to develop it, and by the fifth degree, you've got it. Isolated unity, I the soul. So to say that most of us don't know what it means to really be the soul in splendid isolation, which unitively includes everything, is to speak a truth, I believe. I mean, we have a lot of talk, but not the real thing. So here we have the life units, the monads, the jivas. You know, these are the different little parts that experience consciousness. We're speaking, we extend the idea of soul. Now, can we do that? You know, like in music and some kinds of very moody music and all that. Say, boy, that music has a lot of soul. But basically, you know, it's got a lot of feeling and emotion to it, which is lower down on the continuum of the sentient soul. And then we go through the whatever happens on the higher mental plane and on and on and on, soul reaching the universal logos. The only place soul, in a sense, disappears because it is completely overcome and completely overwhelmed by being. The being is such, you know, infinitely greater than soul. The only place, and if you can't call it a place, is in the state of absoluteness, which is so powerfully being or beingness that all the various distinctions that we have are not really necessary. You can't divide the absolute into principles, you know, like Atma, Buddhi, Manas, and, you know, causal body, and then lower Manas, and sentiency or astrality, and egoic, what do you call it, etheric body and etheric prana. You can't do that. There's just no division. And when we come to questions about no division, we get lost, usually. So basically, brotherhood is a monadic condition. I think we really begin to realize that we are the other. We are the other in the monadic place. And let's just say that the masters are on the border of that, but it is the Chohans of the sixth degree that really are starting to get there. And one day we'll all be Chohans of the sixth degree, as we have been infinitudinously on the way down and the way up. And of course, down and up are relative terms, but we just have to figure out what we are trying to do in the creative act, which is this universe. What is the archetype of creativity that we are setting forth that makes this universe unique from all other universes in which we have been the main actor, and really the only actor? So later in the Aquarian age, under Venus, we will figure out what brotherhood really is. And we'll live it. And by that time, a lot more people who can express monadic being will exist. I think, what I wanted to say here, we got to realize that the ageless wisdom, poor Blavatsky, what's she going to do to write? And the Tibetan is there with his symbolic pen and says, what word do I choose? No word will do. If I really wanted the right language, I'd probably offer Senzar, the ideographic priestly language of the initiates. But okay, he's trying to get through to us. So the ageless wisdom, you can have some language which really conveys just how things are. And otherwise, many symbolic and blind instances of languaging, which, if how do I say it? Let him who has eyes see, let him who has ears hear. If you have the way in according to intuition, if you have the eyes to see, if you have the ears to hear, then go in. You'll understand. And otherwise, the language is just a blind. And of course, long study. I've been studying these books now, these particular books, for 49 years. Yeah. And before that, Secret Doctrine and other theosophical works. And I'm well aware of how the teacher can come along and blind you. You think he's saying one thing? In fact, he's saying something else. And one of the principal ways, here's what I've discovered, and maybe I've discovered more, but at least a little something here, that one of the principal ways of blinding us, lest we're not ready for the info that we might otherwise get, is to use the same term for different things and different terms for the same thing. Now just think about that for a minute. Isn't this go with that and this go with that? And, we're very concrete in that way. But the same term for different things or different terms for the same thing. Now, when you see it, then you say, oh, obvious. You see what he's doing here. But when you don't see it, it really makes a mess out of the many and the one. And you say, well, I just don't understand this. And from the Tibetan might come the words, well, you're not ready to understand. So let's just say, if you're very familiar with the teaching, it does help, and you see what he's doing. Just think, 30 years of writing with Alice Bailey. And when he says, I could write volumes on this, that, or the other, he really means it. But there are limitations, of course, in the physical instrument. And Alice Bailey, though they did, kind of keep her alive quite a bit when she might have faded away, well, even she had her limitations. And the story goes, sometimes he'd want to work with her, and he'd tune in and say, "Oh, can't work today. Too much concrete menace. It won't come through properly." So think about your own relation to concrete menace and the more abstract mind that we're trying to cultivate now, and which will be cultivated particularly during the next 2,000 years. Yeah, a little more about brotherhood there. Yeah, one soul, each soul identical with the oversoul. Okay, brotherhood, but you know how excited you can get about the concept of brotherhood from the emotional aspirational point of view. But later, when we climb higher into the triadal and intuitive levels, it's just a fact. It's a fact, and there's a difference between aspiring to brotherhood and thinking it's such a great idea, and how very exhilarating it is, and actually knowing it is a fact. Now, some of you will be familiar with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, one of the greatest pieces of music ever written. And he used as the basis for the fourth movement the Pillar Ode to Joy. And this was a great celebration of brotherhood. Now you got to listen to it, and you got to decide from what level it was coming. Schiller, playwright, poet, all that. And it certainly touches, in my view anyway, what else can I offer you from my own point of view? It touches the Buddhic plane, in my view. It's like that astral Buddhic leap. It's not a scientific presentation. It's a tremendously artistic presentation. And Masamori is funny sometimes. He says, in one transport of art, you can overcome, well, get ready for these words, you can overcome the cerebral sinuosity of the brain. He says, well, you're just there directly. There you are. You don't have to go through all these twists and turns trying to get there. So there will be, I'm thinking about, you can think about what have been some high moments in your life with regard, let's say, to the arts or whatever else inspires you. And for me, the fourth movement of the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven has done that. Maybe something inside a person, a kind of a harmonic configuration is touched, and they're never quite the same. Okay, yeah, I just want to say it is connected with both Gemini and Libra. It's probably in the Venus decade of the Aquarian age that it will appear, which is the last 720 years. But remember, Gemini does depict the brothers. Okay, so also during the Gemini period, it may show itself. Buddhi, that a wonderful thing that seems to appear deep in art and beauty, it will appear as the age of brotherhood is manifesting. And it's a lot of second ray with Venus eventually, not just the fifth ray. Fifth ray soul, but sixth ray, second ray monad, the dual monad of Venus. And some laws of the soul will lead you there, and the law of magnetic impulse, the second law of the soul, the law of group progress, the fifth law of the soul, they will lead you towards brotherhood. Now, just stop to think for just a moment. Little meditation here. When's the last time and under what circumstances that you remember yourself experiencing what you would call brotherhood? Remember, Aquarius is really helpful there. If Aquarius is part of your sun sign or your rising sign or something, there will be a tendency there. Not always, but can be. When's the last time? Maybe it's not so common experience, but maybe there are some moments, when you're at a meeting or a gathering and there's a real upliftment. I don't remember the last time really myself, but I do remember when I was 12 years old. I was attending, and I did for 6 years, the National Academy of the Arts. Became that. It was called the National Music Camp, at the time, got into vocal music, and I was a pianist and all that kind of stuff. And then came the final can't believe that was 65 years ago, and I'm still, anyway, if I had looked at it with a critical eye, I might have said, oh, sour note there, dancer didn't get it there, whatever. But it was Franz Liszt, and it was Les Préludes, his Les Préludes. And I was completely overwhelmed by the beauty and the soaring promise of this music. I just, maybe I've heard it before somewhere. Maybe I don't, like Flash Gordon or something. But it was so astonishing, and it brought everything together. And there was great unity that I hadn't experienced before. Also, under, I'm relaying some of these musical experiences because I think about the soul ray of Germany, Fourth Ray, and Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, and I've sung in all those, under all those different composers, their music. And when you're singing in a choir of 500 people, something of the Buddhic plane gets through to you. So, maybe this is a plug, but we really have to educate our children in the arts so they can experience that transport into the higher realms, which Master Moria says is uninterrupted. And with Moria, he keeps repeating it, and he says, with beauty thou hast the light. well, he was King Solomon and many things, and the beauty factor in his life was just tremendous, as Akbar the Great and so forth. So while we're studying these things very closely, assiduously, we have to remember that we're on the border of Manas Buddhi. It would be such a shame to leave a life like this, like Moses, who could not enter the promised land, if we did not understand what beauty was looming ahead of strict manas and mental understanding. We have to achieve Buddhi Manas. Sometimes when you combine your Mercury and your Venus in a chart, it is a good, it augurs well. It's a good sign that beauty and Manas can join. Buddhi Manas, and of course, lying ahead of us still is to bring in the will. Vulcan, Mercury, Venus. Those three form a triangle: will, beauty, and or say will. Well, you can relate Venus and Mercury both to the Buddhic plane in different ways. Venus by its monadic aspect, but the mind is also there. The combination of Venus and Mercury, these must be two planets which are tremendously related because they show up in the same place doing different things, each for mutual enhancement. Okay. Now, obviously, there's a lot to say about all these things and a lot to think about. And if you just open your mouth and started to talk to yourself, you would find your thought would lead in various directions, which might be maybe illuminating, So we're on our way there. The last thing that came up was the archetype of brotherhood is our relationship to the solar angel. And when we succeed, I mean, everybody's got one. Everybody has a solar angel, except maybe a very few of the most recently individualized types that we look at as now, today, living in the jungles and tribes and so forth. Their day will come. But even they have received the stimulation of the solar angel, even if not the direct embodiment. So, see, here's the thing about this higher power, as the 12-step programs talk about it. That higher power is not just something outside yourself. It's deeply embedded and embodied in you. It reaches down and anchors itself in very specific ways. Somewhere DK talks about, the heart of the heart chakra, something like that, of the solar angel leads to your head chakra or something. This is science. There is this brotherly relationship, brother, sisterly, between a being that was a successful human being of the previous solar system and you, because that being has gone off and been trained, most likely within the star system of Sirius, and has come back to help. And that being really is our elder brother. Yeah, the elder brother, in a very good sense, is that solar angel or angel of the presence. And the great thing about the Bailey work is that you start cultivating that right from the first with your meditation called the Master in the Heart. And in the Moria Federation, we offer that also right away, because it might be a picture of the Master in your heart center, which eventually becomes, DK tells us, the presence of the Master in your heart center, or it might be what's called the ideal image. He says maybe for some of the more mental types, the ideal image of what you should be and become is found in your heart center. I'm just aware that there's so much to, but you know, I believe in something called spherical study. It's all one big book, and wherever you start, you're going to take in everything anyway. So there's no way for us to know where we're going to end up. We've got kind of an outline here, and it's a lot of pages. And we'll just keep going, talking about the whole and the part. The wholeness which you really are, and the part which you think you are. Just a little bit more, maybe. Just as God, let's see, what is this? Hold on. I just got too many things here. Yeah, it says, the law of correspondences will explain the details of this relationship, namely all souls being part of the oversoul. For all the kingdoms in nature, so man is the macrocosm for all the human, subhuman kingdoms. And I wonder how much we really apply that when we're thinking about how we treat the animals and the plants. There have been some outstanding people, of course, that have really given their heart to the animal kingdom or even to the plant kingdom, and have done amazing things with the mineral kingdom also. But you are a macrocosm, and you have also a greater macrocosm. It says in this book, anyway, that the solar logos is to be considered our macrocosm. Well, this is all good analogical thinking. And remember how DK said, I mean, you know, you have what you have, right? But he said, the fourth ray mind is very important in my work, he said, probably because its ability to create analogy is so strong, and analogy or correspondence is the great revelatory method of learning, you know, what's in our cosmos. So we need to be trained to think analogically, and he does give us a little bit later on some training. I came to a section that I had worked on, and boy, it's pretty rigorous analogy, and I think you'll get something out of it. We live in a system of the fourth order, our solar system as it's called. We have a yellow sun. Yellow is the fourth ray color, and probably the monadic ray of our particular solar system, the submonadic ray, is the fourth. Analogy will be a very, very important to all these different ratios as, you know, as what you'd come into these mathematical problems and it would say, you know, as A is to B, so X is to Y, and you would have to look at what the proportion would be, and, you know, fairly simple in some ways, and they would give you methods of solving it. But the law of analogy, learn how to think analogically, and when you look at something or take it in, say, okay, what might this represent symbolically? What is like this on a higher or a lower plane? Sometimes here in the Temple of Silence, well, actually we do have an eternal flame. You know, sometimes it's not been totally eternal, but we do our best. And so it's just a series of candles. What does it remind you of? Well, you know, in one way, what's the analogy? The analogy, it maybe can be considered the eternal flame of the monad, or the eternal flame of our cosmos, our universe, from which have been lit all flames. And it continues to burn for the duration of the great cycle, and hopefully our little representations continue to burn as well, reminding us of our higher possibilities. So learn how to think analogously, and learn how to think with a little more detail correspondentially. I used to really like analogy tests, and I almost got everything right on one analogy test, except in my ignorance, I didn't know that vodka was made of potatoes. So I got that one wrong. But it can fill in the blanks, if you know what I mean. You know, there's just something you do know, and there's something you don't. But if you get the analogy, you're going to know there's something you didn't know. Okay. Well, look, what can I do? I'm going to stop this right away. I just want to mention the 7 kingdoms of nature. This is taken from Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, and let's go back here just a little bit. You know, I think, you know, we could talk until the 6th degree initiates meet for the next time in the year 2050, and still not finish the book. And by the way, if you have the Alice Bailey CD-ROM, which of course I strongly recommend, you can make a half a screen over on the side just to see the original while we're dealing with the amplification. And I look forward to getting rid of this this mouse, which is causing me no end of earache. And I hope it's not for you that way. Michael told me the other day, don't worry, it's not happening to us. So, okay. And now we'll go on. The next one will be number 16, and it'll be group webinar number 12, and it'll be on the, so far as I know, things do change. Let's see, Michael, what page are we on? Well, I think we're still on the same page.
We are still on page 7.
Okay, well, that's nice. I'm sorry. After the fundamentals are taken care of, we may find ourselves actually moving ahead, which would be nice. Let's see. Just a second. Yeah. Beginning throat. I don't know why it's the throat center, because it's really TCF. It's not throat center anything. There we go. All right. So I just want to remind us, as the last thing, that there are various kingdoms of nature. And they're not just found on our planet. Throughout the solar system, these kingdoms of nature are found in different expressions on the different planets. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have other solar systems where similar kingdoms of nature are also found. Man, we know, is not only the fourth creative hierarchy of human monads, but it is the fourth kingdom in nature. And we, go below it, and we're familiar with the subhuman kingdoms. Kingdom number 3, the animal kingdom, but the fifth ray is important. Kingdom number 2, the vegetable kingdom, but that yearning for the sun on the sixth ray, that's important. Kingdom number 1, it teams up with the seventh ray to, how does he put it? Something like the ray of orderly arrangement or the ray of exact arrangement, something like that. But it doesn't stop there, of course. And all of us are getting ready to enter a new kingdom. That new kingdom is the fifth kingdom in nature. It's the kingdom of souls. When you start hovering around the first degree, the birth of the Christ in the heart, you are putting your foot, so to speak, into the fifth kingdom. And that is what is the goal for the Aquarian age, that certain number of human beings do achieve that entrance into the fifth kingdom of nature. Now, if we go a little bit beyond that, this is the question. The kingdom of planetary lives. It's the sixth kingdom, and the monadic plane is very important. These are self-realized monads, and the ray is number 2. Just the way, kind of interesting, that number 3 is the ray of the kingdom of souls. But remember, these people become adepts. So their knowledge of spiritually scientific adaptability is tremendous, the third ray. And here is this great love and wisdom that pours forth from the monadic plane. When you become a Chohan of the 6th degree, and in such a case, you would be capable of leading a ray ashram, like Master Moria, Chohan 6th degree, with whom he's same. Paul the Venetian, same. Master Serapis, same. Master Hilarion, same. Master Jesus, same. And a certain unknown 7th ray Chohan, some people think they know. I'm just remaining mute on that. They are members of the kingdom of planetary lives. And these other great beings that live, because it just starts there on the monadic plane. Maybe it goes all the way to the planetary logoi themselves, maybe. And the kingdom of solar lives, they are under the direct influence of the solar logos and are, and this is the question, I haven't resolved it for myself, but are the solar logoi members of the kingdom of solar lives? Or is it something included within those solar logoi that are on their way to becoming like he is, that are members of the kingdom of solar lives? It gets a little bit tricky up on that high level, and we have to proceed cautiously. And DK does say things that are interesting. He says, yeah, we come from the monadic plane, but the what is he called? The divine builders, is that it? The divine builders are found on that level, the second level of the cosmic physical plane, and they're much higher than the monads. Okay, so how far does a kingdom expand? We know there's some very primitive plants and some highly developed plants. Same with animals. Look at all the, you probably took biology and the study of the various phyla and all the very undeveloped types, all the way up to man himself. So a kingdom has to stretch, and we can't just say, oh yeah, here's the sixth kingdom, so that's Chohan's. That's like the bottom floor of the sixth kingdom. Where it ends, well, that has to be discussed. And again, like I say, by having found the page, 844 in this book is the chart to study about all kinds of lives that are part of our solar system and the different levels on which these lives are found. Okay, friends. Now, I mean, I don't want to, if we just go on and on, we'll hear things, but to digest them and to have a chance for you to think about them and so forth, that will be an opportunity that is gone. So right now, you are a member of the human kingdom. And, but the Christ is not, although he's still a member of the fourth creative hierarchy. Now, does that make sense? Because one of those hierarchies is a bigger thing than the kingdom. I mean, within the fourth creative hierarchy are a number of kingdoms. And probably that's going to be so for some of these higher hierarchies. These are very, very advanced groupings. Well, come on. Come on, come on. Let's see. There we go. I won't even get onto the cosmic astral plane. It's no use. So, here's the human hierarchy, the initiates, the lords of sacrifice, the fourth creative hierarchy, and within that, all those kingdoms. A number of them, for sure, and well, there arise some interesting questions about whether what do you do with the animal kingdom and vegetable kingdom and mineral kingdom, and you know why? Because we have been through, I don't know on what globe, a good theosophist might be able to tell you, we have been through the mineral kingdom, we've been through the plant kingdom, and we have been through the animal kingdom before moving on to the human kingdom and into the kingdom of souls and the kingdom of planetary lives and so forth. Still, members, it looks like, of the fourth creative hierarchy. So that's one of those questions that I'm really holding in my mind and wondering about all of these possible classifications of lunar lords coming from the moon chain. Just wondering about the subdivisions into which DK probably spares us by not, being too meticulous. There is the second-rate joke there. There is meticulous entirety, and then there's ridiculous entirety. So having been guilty of the latter on occasion, I just try to keep it sane and not too complicated. All right. We have a little time. And if there are any questions or comments, maybe BL and Michael, you're here. BL is not. So Michael, I was going to ask you to help BL, but you can help ferret it out if there's anybody that has things they'd like to say. Now look, everybody, you're going to have to think broadly. No way around it. And you're going to have to think in a way that you might say, well, look, how practical is this? But it's practical to become spherically omniscient. What do I mean by that? It means you have a sphere in which you live and move and have your being. You have a ring past not. The more you know about that sphere in which you live and move and have your being, until you transcend to a greater sphere, the better you will be at helping to express the design or the archetype which animates that sphere. So, endless knowledge, which we will never reach, at least outside, well, maybe we'll reach it outside a universe, but probably not, because absolute infinity has so many requirements to it, and we just don't know, and it's not known within that huge state what blinded emanations will choose. The consequences of their choice are completely known. This track leads to this track leads to this track, no matter how many there are. But the free will of that choice is, in my present view at least, not known. All right, what have we got? Anybody? Anybody that wants to venture in?
I will, Michael.
Whoa, okay.
You touched on the interpretive laws of analogy and of correspondence. And people probably wonder, well, is there a difference? And if so, what is it? And I've come up with perhaps some key phrases to help with that. And the law of analogy, interpret the essential similarity.
Mm-hmm.
And for the law of correspondence, inexact detailed reflection.
Yeah, you add that to it. I think that is.
But Michael, these are not the only interpretive laws that we have to work with.
Which one?
the law of permutation, which is creative substitution, and
Okay.
the law of resemblance, which is similarity in form,
Okay.
and the law of uniformity being unity in diversity.
Let me think about that. Yes. Okay. And the law of mutation, I suppose, has to be included in there, where we are always at different stages of similar structures depending upon the plan. But it's not exactly the same as what you've offered. Look, I'm very grateful that you are working on these. Friends, in the old days, they used to have a course in the arcane school called occult law. When I worked there, it was hidden in all the dust and all the rest of it. And it probably was very much taken from a treatise on cosmic fire, but there are other places where it can be taken from. And I think the treatise you're working on, Michael, is sort of exhuming and going beyond what might have been offered there. And look, I'd never thought about some of the things that you're suggesting now. You said resemblance, was that one of them? Or how'd they go?
The law of resemblance, yes.
Yes. Well, these are things that are not part of my daily Bailey fare. I don't eat them for breakfast, So it's going to be, I think, a very thought-provoking and expansive offering.
Yeah, these are coming from the 2 volumes of Isis Unveiled, all the Bailey work, the Yoga, Agni Yoga series, the 3 volumes of The Secret Doctrine, and some other sources as well.
Well, you're really working as the scholar on these things, and I'm sure it will. I already, when you're talking, I find it mind expanding. So I look forward to it. And then, of course, all the distinctions between the laws, and there are some, easier laws in a way, more down to earth, so to speak. Laws of the soul and the laws of the solar system, and even the 3 cosmic laws are quite definite in what they say. But these things that seem to involve analogy and correspondence, and I like the differentiation you made there, that really requires some pretty acute thinking. So when do you think you'll have it in form?
Well, what I have discovered is over 400 law names.
Uh-oh.
So I am working my way through them.
Wow.
That's not to say that they're all different. For instance, the laws of the soul have 2 different names depending on how you want to look at them. So, and the law of karma has 5 names, maybe.
Okay, and right, and are they differentiations of the same thing, or are they the same thing,
or aspects of a law?
Yeah, exactly. Really, it's I think it's a marvelous undertaking, and even if it takes you to the year 2050, I plan to be back in incarnation and interested in Alice Bailey and commentary thereon. So keep working. Wow.
It will be finished, and in the foreseeable future, whatever that foreseeable future entails.
I like that phrase. It kind of makes a definite statement without having to totally commit yourself. to a date. Thank you,
Anyhow,
Michael. That was
Martha,
illuminating.
yeah, Martha's hand is raised.
I see it, and here we go. Martha.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. I'm a, I'm in that course, by the way, on the arcane law, and it brings to mind that I guess what was stunned with a lot of times when you get into a new course, it's like, well, what is the point here? What is it? And that I was stunned in the terms of understanding law. With this notion that a law basically is a divine impulse, but it becomes a law, as I understand it. You can clarify, Michael, if I don't have it right, but it becomes a law at the point that somewhere in form, at the level of evolution or wherever, whatever kingdom is moving forward, it connects, and then there's this reciprocity between the divine impulse and that which lives. So that's part of why, for me, all the different names don't mean very much. But I wanted to go back to another point that you made. You brought up a thought that when you were talking about the fact that to penetrate some of the blinds, that we look at the fact that the same thing has many different names and different realities are elucidated through the same name. It occurred to me, is it possible, this is kind of simplistic perhaps, but is it possible that some of the element that goes on there is that it's about remembering and forgetting, and that somewhere in our souls, sometimes we remember that where we've been that may go back to another kingdom, even a different solar level, and that so we remember certain things that we've forgotten on very, very deep levels. But when they are re-remembered, they become very simple. And so what I guess what I was imagining was that if the earlier solar system was about intelligence, and we're in the solar system that is about love, isn't it possible that that also is partly where the blinds come, that we are given an opportunity in these teaching. We're given an opportunity to remember on these different levels where we are now and where we have been and where we may be going, so that in some ways we actually need the experience of having the same thing named differently, or different things named in the same way. I hope I'm clear. I wanted to draw you out on this a bit.
Well, it's a complex consideration, but I think in one way, the answer is yes. Remember that there were life units that were individualized in the previous solar system, and they were human, and they came into this solar system across a Saturnian bridge, and they had, some of them, a fair amount of experience, so much so that they were present before the individualization began to occur on Earth. There they were, having come from the man experience, humanity, and whether they always did well regarding newly individualizing man, I think not. I think that's part of the karma. that they did not necessarily treat the newly individualizing man with the same respect and care and all that, but that they did have experience to draw upon, I would say so. I would also say that, just in a simple way, we've worked very hard over some years thinking about things as deeply as we might be able to. And sometimes that's enough. The hint, the, what were we calling it? It acts as a trigger. The blind acts as a trigger to those who have established that knowledge within themselves. And it also acts, very interestingly, as a barrier against further comprehension in most cases, for those who just have not established that knowledge within themselves. And that's from a much earlier, or we would say much more recent type of experience. Because look, if any of us has been working for more than 3,000 or 4,000 years in some kind of scholarly way, I would be very surprised. So we're talking about a very short-term thing, and then you're going all the way back, maybe, to the moon chain. You can't leave that out of it, because so many of the students who are now Bailey students were moon chain types. And that was more recent. You want to go all the way back. And they came into this our Earth chain with petals unfolded. Now, why do I mention the petals? Because in a way, they are repositories of knowledge. And the specific type of knowledge comes in with the atomic triangle. So can they draw upon these things? They can, but it doesn't necessarily have to be from the ancient past. DK says what it is: illumine those who are ready, protect those who are not. And they're so skillful. He's so skillful. And he even tells you he's doing it. He tells you, I'm now giving you an occult blind, something of that nature. It's up to you to decide whether I'm speaking literally or this is a symbolic statement. So the method of a teacher to reveal has a lot of skill behind it. And I would say, from my point of view, involves the last three, for myself, I don't know, I think maybe 3,000 years, 4,000 years, something like that. I don't go back too far. Even if I might think my origin was the previous solar system, I wasn't getting very far in that solar system when coming into this one. And if I was not individualized in that previous solar system, then I was pretty well going through the non-human experience on there or on the moon chain, and there wouldn't be necessarily that much to draw upon. So, because we're looking for clarification of a deep matter based on human thought and experience, or maybe some kind of impression from a higher guide. I guess that's the best I can do on that, Martha.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. What I heard you do is I heard you distinguish between when the abstract mind can fool around with really, really big things like the previous solar systems and the experiential, which is the use of the blind simply to illumine as a trigger. I've heard you say so many times that a blind is a barrier, but it's the first time I've heard you say the blind is a trigger, and that's very helpful, and it's grounding. You were grounding to me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Martha. I'll have to think about it, but you know how many times we use the word soul? I mean, all of us Bailey students. And then if the higher mind experience, the soul experience really hits, we're probably going to be astonished between a bunch of words and the actual experience. So however DK gets it across to us, I trust him on these matters.
Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Okay, Michael. Judy has written in the question box, the universes are the eyes of Source. Source is absolute isness. Cyclic isness is dynamic evolution.
I think Judy has some trained abstract mind going for her. Now look, let me give you my impression here. Liking, of course, how you phrase these things. With the source is absolute isness, I go completely with that. Cyclic isness is dynamic evolution. And here's what I would say about that. The cyclic finite reflection of source as source is seen by the absolute deity is dynamic evolution. Now, don't ask me to repeat that. When we come to isness, Judy, it's my impression. All I can do is offer my impression. My impression that just isness is forever uncaused. Or some say it is the cause of itself. The self becoming one, the self causing one, and all that. To me, isness is the very substance which is absolute reality. So I find nothing cyclic in it in terms of its eternal duration, uncaused, without beginning and without end. But I find a cyclic adaptation which arises from isness as the absolute deity, the actor. And that actor, well, I think the actor is cyclic. And what the actor chooses to manifest as is cyclic. The only thing that is, you know, the very second fundamental of the secret doctrine is the great breath, which is a tremendous archetype of duality. And now duality is forbidden in isness. Doesn't make any difference if things look different from each other, they are. So they are one in isness. So my view of this, which is all I can do but share it, is isness is forever uncaused. Think about that for a minute. And of course, you know, take it further, and what it's going to be saying to you is that you are forever uncaused. You are, well, this is, you know, where it gets tricky, but and no tiny little unit such as we are, so those are my excuses. But coming from isness comes all of the Maya, supra universal Maya and universal Maya. How that works out, I've been, it's even an act of hubris to even try to work that out. But okay, let's just say out of business, that is out of I, out of you, out of the one identity, all things. But there can be the cyclic appearance of certain things within absolute infinity, certain perceptions, which are really self-perceptions of the absolute deity. There can be that, but in terms of business with all capital letters, if you will, there's no cyclicity whatever, because it demands change. And the boundless, immutable, changeless principle. So, the question arises, how does that which does not change become the substratum of Maya? And, you just have to go in for there's no immediate answer. The changelessness of that, and yet the Maya producing event that occurs and produces duality and cyclicity, and out of that you get the second fundamental of the secret doctrine. Now here's the problem. The second fundamental of the secret doctrine contradicts the first. That's why I've sometimes called this great isness, I've called it the great paradox. You can't have duality when there's immutability. Okay? Immutability, nothing changes. Cyclicity, appearance and disappearance change all the time. So that's a really good one to ponder. And I still haven't found the Anna Kingsford channeling that Blavatsky was holding forward. She must have been, a strong and true channel, because Blavatsky was very hard on erroneous teaching. But if you realize that the first two fundamentals seem to contradict each other, at least seem to, and I've been working on getting rid of the seeming, then you really have something to think about. And I do believe, here's what I think, that the great breath is in the realm of Maya, and that the all souls identified as the oversoul is also in the realm of Maya. The only no thing which is not Mayavic is absoluteness, using our pitiful words. I do, however, like what you're doing with the words, and I do like that, because it shows that you are using the abstract faculties. That's what we have to do the next 2,000 years. It's not so much intuition that's going to be cultivated. It is the abstract mind as a higher type of mind than the concrete mind. That's what's going to be cultivated next 2,000 years. What breathes in and breathes out is the absolute deity of the actor. Isness or absoluteness, you know, what are good words for the no thing? I mean, for something you shouldn't even be talking about anyway. Nobody should. But yet, you know, it's irresistible. There's no breathing there. Take the word immutability. Isness never changes. The ultimate isness never changes. Something can go forth from it without changing it. And then, of course, that requires pondering too. But there's no cyclicity in absoluteness. There is a second fundamental of the secret doctrine which demands dualistic cyclicity, and a third fundamental which demands identification of the part with the whole. That's the best I can do for the moment. You need an actor. Absoluteness is not the actor. Absoluteness is not picking and choosing. Absoluteness just shows up as an absolute deity, and the self-perception of the absolute deity, which turns out to be either utterly the sameness or absolutely infinite differentiation in absolute infinity. Now, you know, if you think enough about infinities or absolute infinity, I think it might just drive you a little crazy. It's sort of the hardest subject of all, in a way, because it kind of contradicts what you normally expect. If I was to say to you that one infinitude has within it infinitely more infinitudes than the one infinitude from which those other infinitudes began or started. It sounds like nonsense, but it is true that every interval or series of intervals generates an infinity of infinitudes. Not the absolute infinity, but still an infinity of infinitudes. It just is not, it's a horse of a different color. It's like going to buy a horse and the horse is purple. It just is not what you expect. And in order to go get into it more, you have to really think about it. And even if you're led to some really weird conclusions, you can't just throw up your hands and say, oh, that can't be. No, you have to stick with it. Okay, great. Great. Well, you know, okay. All that a person can ask is that others may come a little closer to understanding what they're trying to express. And then, you know, how it could be, you know, you go to a psychiatrist or psychologist, and after a while you come out of the office and you say, hey, you know, I really feel understood. And that does something for you. It's usually on the Kama monastic level that kind of understanding occurs. But it's really important in a marriage and a friendship and relationship with children and theirs with you and so forth, that the different people feel understood. It's and it's a step on the road to unity, which is a step on the road to oneness, which is, if one knows how to do it, and who knows how to do it, a step on the way to absolute zero-ness. You know, the abstract mind is a funny thing. It does make sense in the last analysis. At first, it just seems like, oh boy, that's far out there. And what are we talking about here anyway? But after a while, it begins to make sense. Okay, friends, tomorrow, Tuya will present on the soul of nations, and we're going to be working with Michael and Esoteric United Nations. There's been some funny business going on with Google groups, and you know, people are not necessarily getting their mail, and email addresses are disappearing and all that. And I can't imagine it's just because we called the thing the Esoteric United Nations. We can test it out and see if we can do just something like EUN and see if the groups continue to disappear. Maybe they won't. And we'll work hopefully with Michael on that, and the other people who maybe know either Yahoo groups or Google groups better than Tuya and I know it. What are we doing on these broadcasts and webinars? We're in the Department of Education. We not only, but head center, adjunct center, throat center. We don't want to leave the heart out of it. The heart is in it. But this is all about the road to omniscience. First, one sphere after another breaks. And you're more inclusive in the word omni. And as we've ever done, eventually do we discover not only that all knowledge is ours, but that we are the knowledge itself. I am the light of the world. I am the love of the world. I am the will of the world. Is there anything you are not? You know, just think about it. It's, is there anything you are not? No. All these things. It's not just that you are the observer of them. It's that your self-observation brings those things into being. And then your choice eventually, you know, and I'm going very high here, brings the universe into being. And, you know, it sounds like some great inflation, but it's not. We're all in the same boat and we're all equal. We're equal in essence, but we're not equal in what we've done with our ignorance, if you know what I mean. But eventually, we all make it up, and it all works. Wait a second. I've got something wrong here with Tuya, namely a microphone that is. Dear, now, please, yeah, I tell you what I'm going to do. Let's get you over on the other side. Okay. Now, we'll just take a second and you're self-muted. Is there any way you can get out of that? You're over on the panelist side. Why don't I make you presenter? Just watch what's on your screen. Okay, and let's see. You're still self-muted. Michael, is there anything we can do to unmute her?
Being self-muted, to you need to unmute yourself.
Well, there, you see, if you study these things long enough, it does something to your intellect. Absolutely. There we are.
Oh, I
Good.
am on my mobile and it is so difficult. I am tapping, and it does not unmute myself. But now I managed. So I wanted just to say that the email is back for AUN.
EUN in English, right? Yeah.
Right. It is
EUN.
back now.
And what's it called? EUN@gmail.com?
No,
esotericun@gmail.com.
Well, if we run into trouble, we can try a few more prior names that nobody recognizes. Even just to put down EUN would be enough. But we'll have to talk to the people who know. Maybe, Michael, you're one of them, and BL seems to know something, and maybe Joe. Okay, now I'm going to make myself the presenter again, and just want to say, let's end with the great invocation. And I, on behalf of all of us here, Tuya, Livy, myself, Michael, BL, and Joe, that's pretty much the team. Oh, okay, and Tuya, are you there? Because I don't think we have a meeting tomorrow, Martha. I think it's the 22nd. What we do have tomorrow is the pre-full moon. And we also have in the evening the kind of, it's called Soul of Nations, but I'm sure Tuya will mention plenty about the Esoteric United Nations. So we didn't set up another meeting, which was a webinar for that. We're just going to have our usual Soul of Nations unless Tuya changes her mind here. Tuya, do you have something to say?
Yes, we have tomorrow very busy evening again. So I think there is then 3 different things. There is also Sacred Pentagram full moon approach. And tomorrow we are going to have a shorter meditation in Soul of Nations and again concentrating upon this virus problem.
Okay.
And then we were thinking that we would have on Monday, but I think if we could have that on Tuesday, we have to talk about that.
Okay, now when is the, in this series of things, when is Sacred Pentagram going to be offered?
Tomorrow, 7:30.
What time?
Or was it 7 p.m.? I didn't check. 1 second. I tried to find it.
You won't have a lot of time because at 8 o'clock GMT, the pre-full moon goes on.
Yes, we have that 7 p.m. GMT.
Okay.
Sacred Pentagram.
Okay.
And then you have pre-full moon at 8.
Okay, and then at 6 o'clock you have Soul of Nations. So it's really, now these are, Soul of Nations is a broadcast, Sacred Pentagram is a broadcast, and pre-full moon is a webinar. And Michael, did you put the pre-full moon link into the chat box? Or can that be done?
Michael, it is the same than the general link, the broadcast link.
No, it's not. The webinar at 8 o'clock is not the same.
Oh, you are, oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
That's okay.
sure.
Okay. Well, maybe this is being left for me to do, and I
My,
apologize that, yeah,
the pre-full moon webinar link is in the chat box, as well as the exact full moon broadcast information.
fantastic. Okay, that'll be 8 o'clock. We'll start there, as we always do. So we've got 3 shows in a row, folks. 6, 7, and 8 GMT, and maybe we'll see some of you there. And we appreciate your presence here very much. So lots of love and many blessings to you. And now I'll just kind of fade out here, if possible. Okay.